A Supreme Court of Canada battle over religious freedom is underway. Trinity Western University and why it's a case that matters to us all. And in BC, changing family ethics get a rough ride in curriculum, diving into rights on all sides of the issue. I'm Lorna Duick, and this is Context.
The issue is, can you use your beliefs to infringe on someone else's rights?
Hearing from those who object to a conservative Christian sexual ethic in the School of Law. Sheldon Neil sits down with a gay rights activist. Muslim and Catholic experts speak to us about faith under fire at the Supreme Court of Canada.
We're not anything other than the most positive, I think, environment.
Under parental protest, Ontario schools implemented a new sex ed curriculum that broke the boundaries around sexual orientation and gender identity. Now that approach has become a hot issue in BC and Alberta. We speak with newsmakers on the issue in BC. Our Sheldon Neil will be in Ottawa at the Supreme Court of Canada, reporting on the latest on the Trinity Western University case. Professor, author, and our Context blogger, John Stackhouse, helps us figure out the ethics of living private belief in a public world. Coming up on Snapshot. In a moment, why Christian ethics over sex are in the Supreme Court of Canada this week. But first, making room and repair for sexual orientation brought Prime Minister Trudeau to a multi-million-dollar apology in the House of Commons.
It is with shame and sorrow and deep regret for the things we have done that I stand here today and say, we were wrong, we apologize, I am sorry, we are sorry.
All parties showing unanimous support for the Prime Minister's apology after a class action lawsuit filed against the government over the treatment of civil servants who were gay. But just a few steps away from Parliament, LGBTQ rights versus religious rights are now before the Supreme Court. Should a Christian law school be allowed in Canada? A law school that bans students from having sexual relations outside of heterosexual marriage.
At the center of this issue, TWU's Community Covenant, or simply put, Code of Conduct, which bans students from having sexual relations outside of heterosexual marriage. Opponents say the covenant discriminates against LGBTQ students who may want to attend the university. Opponents also fear graduates of the law school may take their beliefs into their professional practice, throwing the idea of blind justice out the window. Trinity Western says this case is about religious freedom and about giving freedom to diversity in education and choice. A statement given by TWU President Bob Kuhn reads, Trinity Western University simply wishes to train lawyers of competence and character in a learning community that reflects Christian values. TWU was denied accreditation from both BC and Ontario law societies. TWU is challenging those rulings at the Supreme Court this week.
Joining us now is lawyer Earl Phillips, who leads Trinity Western University's School of Law. Hello, Earl. Requiring law students to sign a Christian code of conduct has drawn protests from law societies and put your school's existence in peril. Why is a code of conduct important to your law school?
Two things to respond to that. First, the statutory mandate given to Trinity Western University by the legislature of British Columbia was to provide university education with an underlying philosophy and viewpoint that is Christian. And we can only do that if we have a community that supports that idea of an underlying philosophy and viewpoint that is Christian. And it's not a code of conduct, it's a community covenant. It's an important covenant that the university makes to everybody and that all the individual members of the community make to one another and to the university. And they covenant to do all number of very important things, and especially to strive and support one another and encourage one another to practice and live out the Christian virtues of patience and love and joy and peace and gentleness and kindness and mercy and humility and so on. And that's crucial to us.
Okay, Ontario and BC law societies say your 50 spots that you'd like to create at TWU being added to the 2,400 existing law students each year would be discriminatory. Why do you think they are wrong?
We are going to add 60 more law seats in the country. And anybody is entitled to apply for those seats. And to the extent that people come and choose Trinity Western, and they might have chosen another law school, that opens up law seats in other schools. We do not ask people about their faith. We do not ask people about their sexual orientation. We say from the outset, this is who we are as a community. This is the community covenant that we have, and we would ask you to commit to that along with everybody else as you are part of this community. And if you want to do that, you are welcome to come.
All right. Earl Phillips, thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That was Earl Phillips, the Executive Director of the Trinity Western University School of Law. Coming up, Professor John Stackhouse joins us to help make sense of it all.
Join us for a special Context Christmas show on December 19th. Our correspondent Marnie Blome will report from where it all began in Bethlehem. We'll feature musicians, miracles, and stories you won't soon forget. Check our website for times in your region.
Listening to those against a Christian law school in Canada, here's Sheldon Neil.
Trinity Western University would pay for its law school like it does for the rest of its university, by private donations and student tuition. It is not getting government grants. But opponents say TWU is still publicly funded because it receives tax benefits as a result of its registered charity status. TWU opponents say because TWU is tax exempt, it is still underwritten by public funding, the tax exemption being like a subsidy which the government must make up elsewhere. Gay rights pastor Reverend Dr. Brent Hawks is one of those who say TWU is receiving public money, so must play by public rules.
If they're an institution receiving public funds, they should abide by public policy. And they should not have the right to deny gays and lesbians the right to be students or teachers at the university.
Is it not time for another minority rights group, in this case evangelicals, to have their rights?
Human rights codes in our country have traditionally been to give individual rights, to protect individuals. And people have always had the right to hold certain opinions. And no one's saying to evangelical Christians, you can't believe certain things. No one's saying that. The issue is, can you use your beliefs to infringe on someone else's rights? That's the issue. And no, I don't think any one religion should have the right to exercise their beliefs in a way that hurts others. And the best example there is Sunday shopping. Sunday shopping used to be outlawed in Canada because of Christians' beliefs in the Sabbath or the Lord's Day or the Holy Day. And so therefore, no one was allowed to shop on Sundays because of the Christian perspective. And the courts have ruled that's wrong, that no one religion should be able to dictate to others. And I would say the same thing for me. I would say in terms of evangelical Christians, if there's going to be freedom of religion, then there needs to be freedom from religion.
Is it fair to push one group aside, in this case TWU and their evangelical beliefs, in the name of LGBT rights?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want LGBT rights to be able to say, okay, we're going to discriminate against heterosexuals. No, we're not going to discriminate based on sexual orientation, right? And so, we're saying that, gay, lesbian people have protection because sexual orientation is a human rights code, which also protects heterosexuals. So if someone owned a company and wanted to fire all the heterosexuals, they couldn't do it either. So, having sexual orientation in the Human Rights Code is a neutral thing in terms of it protects gays and lesbians and heterosexuals. Now, heterosexuals have not necessarily needed the protection, right? And by having freedom of religion in the Human Rights Code, it protects Christians, it protects Muslims, it protects all religions.
How should we approach the evangelical belief over sexual norms being allowed free expression in Canada?
all religions have the right to talk about, to preach about, to believe various sexual ethics. They all have that right, and they had that right forever. All religions have the right, for instance, I'm going to use another example. You know, we have protection so that gays and lesbians have the right to marry in Canada. But that doesn't mean the Catholic Church has to marry gays and lesbians. They can refuse to do that. That's perfectly okay. As a religious institution, they're allowed to do that. Catholic Church doesn't have to have women priests. They're allowed to do that. No one's attacking the religious right to say you can't hold certain beliefs. And even that you have to, if the religious right doesn't want to have gay and lesbian pastors in their church, you know, they're exempted from that from the Human Rights Code. They have the freedom of that, right? And so, you know, I think that every institution should be able to wrestle with what they think about various sexual ethics.
Thank you so much for your time.
Okay.
Staying with our Sheldon Neil, he's in Ottawa for Trinity's Supreme Court of Canada hearing.
Thank you, Lorna. I'm here in the lobby of the Supreme Court of Canada, where just behind me, the deciding factor on accreditation for lawyers graduating from Trinity Western University will be decided. It's a cold Ottawa morning, and inside the Supreme Court of Canada, interveners on both sides of the TWU issue will present their cases, the outcome of which may not be known for months. Trinity Western University President Bob Coon says the game plan for the 2 days of hearings is well thought out and focused.
We're looking for Trinity Western University's unique law school to be approved in the Canadian context, specifically with respect to the BC Law Society and the Ontario Law Society.
Coon says Christian belief about what they deem as sexual norms in Canada is a question of finding common ground with other values held in society.
I don't see this as under attack necessarily. It's just a question of the interface between Christian values and other societal values.
Jessie Legary, a TWU alumni and now practicing lawyer after completing the last of her studies at University of Toronto, says this is not about division, but rather integration.
It's not meant to be something that divides Canadians. It's meant to create an additional space. It's adding to the options for students, not limiting the options for students.
TWU representatives say it's about religious rights and freedoms. Opponents say it's discrimination.
The Code of Conduct is a discriminatory document that forbids sexual intimacy for the students and professors and staff at the university. It includes a requirement that the students police each other and report instances of sexual misconduct to the institution, and so it effectively bars LGBT people from attending the school.
Leslie Rosenblood is with the Canadian Secular Alliance, an intervener who says while he's sympathetic to both sides, in the end, he opposes the TWU covenant.
We fully support religious freedom and religious expression, and that this is entitled as a shield to protect religious folks and non-religious folks from discrimination. But that religious freedom cannot be used as a sword to deny others their rights.
Bob Coon says TWU is committed to continue being a positive, welcoming institution for all.
We're not anything other than the most positive, I think, environment that you'd find almost anywhere in terms of the Canadian higher education context.
Reporting from Ottawa for Context, I'm Sheldon Neil.
Well, from the university at the Supreme Court to the kindergarten at the trustees' table, how you run Christian ethic alongside public education is challenging all across that plane. Barry Neufeld is a school trustee, has been a school trustee for 24 years, but he's putting his job on the line to say there should be some changes in what's being allowed to be taught in schools. Hi, Barry. You're joining us from Chilliwack. How are you?
I'm fine.
Okay, you have decided to speak up against what's called SOGI curriculum, sexual orientation and gender identity. Why?
Well, when I first spoke out about it, I thought I can no longer be part of a public education system as if this is what they are planning to do. And I actually intended to follow up my initial outburst on Facebook with a resignation from the school board. But the positive response to my speaking up was so overwhelming that I decided, well, I'm in the fray now. I can't back out now. There's too many people counting on me. So I've not only decided to stay on the school board, but I plan to run again in the election, which is about a year from now.
Okay. Do you think Christian belief over sexual ethics is under attack?
It's definitely under attack. Glenn Hansman, the president of the BC Teachers Federation, said that I had to leave my religious beliefs at the door when I walked into a school board room, but I can't. It's the very basis, it's my worldview, and I believe that humankind is created in the image of God.
And so this is your exercise of religious freedom on behalf of the electorate that has elected you. Do you think that we are going to need to have more of these kinds of battles to keep a religious expression in public education?
Yes, forces have tried to silence me by calling me names. I'm not completely opposed to everything in the SOGI agenda, but there are parts of it that I definitely want eliminated and parts that I want changed. I believe we can find a compromise that everybody can live with. I'm particularly concerned about the gender fluidity theory, which is nothing more than a theory. I think this will confuse many children. And I'm also concerned about children, parents, and staff who have issues of conscience. Some of them are Christian, some of them are other belief systems, but they have issues of conscience, and they are afraid to speak up and speak against this. So I feel that I'm trying to be a voice.
All right. Well, Barry Neufeld, your Facebook indicates you certainly have been a voice. Thank you for joining us, Barry.
Thank you very much.
Still ahead, what other religions have to say on the battle underway in Canada for a Christian law school? And who gets final say on sex education in grade school?
Join us for a special Context Christmas show on December 19th. Our correspondent Marnie Blome will report from where it all began in Bethlehem. We'll feature musicians, miracles, and stories you won't soon forget. Check our website for times in your region.
Joining me now to talk about it from their own religious perspective are Amira El-Gawabi, a journalist and human rights advocate from Ottawa, and Philip Horgan, who was one of the lawyers at the Supreme Court this week on freedom of religion. Let's start with you, Philip. It's not the first time you've had to be in the Supreme Court fighting for religious freedom. Why are Catholics so concerned about, a one-off law school application by evangelical Christians?
Well, the case really presents a challenge to what we understand to mean by civil society, what we mean by authentic pluralism. And in the context of the Christian or Catholic perspective, the case is going to have far-reaching implications when it comes to not merely the right for accreditation of proposed Trinity Western Law School graduates that two law societies are opposing. It has a broader implication of the role of Christian or Catholic education, the role of Christian or Catholic healthcare, and the ability to deliver those services in a community for which it may not match up in all cases with what the state demands or the state is expecting in terms of either curriculum or healthcare and so on. Just give the example, we have assisted suicide in this country. Currently, Catholic hospitals are not being obliged to provide that service, but the implications of how Christian or Catholic hospitals will be expected to respond to that challenge, it's going to be touched on by the implication of this case.
Because this is a case that would protect institutional religious freedom.
Well, speaking both to individual, there's an individual law student who's applied as part of the applicants, and there's also the Trinity Western Law School itself. In the context of that, we think of religion, religio, which means to bind. Well, to bind a community. It's about the notion that we exercise our religious rights typically in community. And so for our organizations, the ones that I represented at the hearing, We're speaking to a robust understanding of what we mean by freedom of conscience and religion.
Okay, let's bring in Elmira here, because Elmira, your community, the Muslim community, also watched this case at the Supreme Court closely. Why does it matter so much to you?
I think whenever we are having a conversation about balancing the different human rights that we talk about here in a democracy, it is, of course, going to have a direct impact on various minority communities, various religious communities. And so what we've actually seen in the past from the Supreme Court of Canada is quite a robust protection of religious freedom in this country. We have many, many cases in which we've seen the Supreme Court rule on the rights of individuals to practice their faith freely. So, for instance, we had a young boy who was from the Sikh community who wanted to wear a kirpan to school, and the balance of, the concerns around perhaps safety and his right to practice his religion. And the Supreme Court found that so long as that there was certain ways of concealing it, ensuring that there were no concerns, that he should be free to wear the kirpan. We have other examples of a Jewish man who wanted to put up a sukkot, so a religious kind of building on his balcony in Montreal, and the condominium authority saying they didn't want that, but again, the Supreme Court determining that that would be okay, that it was part of his religious practice and it couldn't be prevented. So we've seen these types of cases. We've seen them involving various faith communities. But what's quite unique about this particular case that we heard talked about already is that here we're looking at institutions and how they can manifest their own religious freedoms in community, as was mentioned. So I think it will be interesting to see how the Supreme Court comes out on this particular case, and then how that will have quite a far-reaching impact on institutions that do serve a specific religious community, for instance, schools or hospitals. So I think it is important to see, because we are living, of course, in a very multi-faith, multicultural society where these types of rights and freedoms from different groups have to be balanced. And so far, I think the Supreme Court has been trying to do that balancing in a pretty effective way.
All right, Elmira, thank you very much from Ottawa. Institutions are made up out of individuals, right?
Absolutely.
It is definitely goes to the core of how we express ourselves in Canada. Thank you both. And we'll be back with more right after this. Well, when religious freedom is all the way at the Supreme Court, it's time to have context blogger Dr. John Stackhouse help us figure it out. He is an ethics professor, great author on that topic. Hello, John.
Hi, Laura.
Okay, two minority groups disagree. They're at the Supreme Court. How do we protect freedom and rights of LGBTQ without infringing on the evangelical Christian belief?
Well, it seems to me all along that Trinity Western has to prove two things. They have to prove that their distinctive sexual code is essential to their Christianity, and they have to prove that this kind of code is essential to their mission as a law school and as a university. If they can show that this is essential to who they are and what they're trying to do, then they should win. If they can't show those two things, then I think they're legitimately in trouble.
Okay, this is an institution asking for rights. We've had individual rights about religious freedom. What are we looking at when we start to say now an institution has rights?
Well, in Canada, we have always recognized the rights of communities as well as individuals, right back to the British North America Act that recognized different communities of French and English and Catholic and Protestant. So this is nothing new. It's just a bit new for us when we've been so individualistic to think about communities as well.
Okay, so your advice on harmony when there are very different systems of values and ethics in two very different communities. How do we get along?
Well, I think Canada's a pretty big place, and I think there's lots of room to get along even when we disagree about things. The question is, I think, are we all contributing to the common good, and are we free to pursue our own vision of flourishing in our own way without hurting somebody else? I think in these basic ways, Trinity Western's law school should be left to go about its business. I don't think it hurts anybody else, and it actually frees up law school spaces for other people. So I think this can be a win-win.
Talk to us about the dilemma. You have a church organization, a Christian organization, asking for government access. So you got church rules, which are a holiness all of their own, saying we want to play by the government rule and get our law school accredited. Is there maybe a conflict? Some places the church just will not be able to go because its ethics are at a totally different plane.
Well, that may happen. I think that the Christian church has always had to prepare to go its own way when Caesar won't let it do what it's supposed to do. At the same time, I think that we have this misunderstanding in Canada that if you take even a single dollar of the government's tax money, you have to act like a government agency. And that's a mistake. These are our dollars. We are the citizens, and the government serves us. And as long as organizations are contributing to the public good in their own distinctive way, we shouldn't have them all act as if they're arms of a municipal, provincial, or federal government. What would things look like if Indian tribes had to act this way, Native peoples were suddenly to act like bureaucrats, or if Acadians would act this way, or if all gay, lesbian, trans communities all felt they needed to act like bureaucrats? It seems to me we head down a very foolish road here. The question really is, are we contributing to the public good, and is it a good political decision to fund such things? If it is, then we should take the money and put it to good use.
All right. And to be very clear, Trinity has a very minuscule amount of public money. These are donation and tuition funded out of people's personal pockets. It's only a small bit of research grants and the charitable tax status. That is the funding structure that's in and that would be a real infringement of religious freedom if a religious group could not express itself fully playing at that table, correct?
Well, I think that's true. I think that not all religious beliefs or practices should be protected, but we should protect them as much as we can. The state is there to help each of us and all of us in our various communities have the best, most flourishing life we can enjoy. We're not there to serve the state. And so I think Trinity Western actually should be allowed to start its law school and meet the appropriate standards for legal education. The burden is really on the state to show that somehow what they're doing is destructive of the public good. I think that's a pretty heavy burden to bear, and I don't think they can bear it.
All right, Dr. John Stackhouse, thank you. Thank you for blogging with us every week.
Great to talk to you again, Lorna.
Freedom of religion in Canada, we still have it. Don't let the Supreme Court challenge put a chill on how you shine. For all of us at Context, we're delighted with freedom of religion. Take care and take good care of each other. We'll talk again next week. I'm Lorna Duick, and you're watching Context.
Voters turning their outrage into online worldwide trends.
Quebec has an interesting relationship with race and religion.
We'll never arrest our way out of this problem.
I guess the politics ahead of the people on the front lines is more concerning.
Of course, it's too dangerous for us to go over to Syria right now.
This is real, isn't it? We could be looking at another Rwanda. Well, this is an issue our next guest is an expert on.
I think it's going to be very difficult for the province to follow these rules.
What is the standard that the church asks?
And he said, God's got you. You are protected.
How does that get decided, what the Pope will address? Joining me now is Wilma Dirksen.
What you're talking about here is the treatment of women in media and entertainment industries.
Bad behavior, is it out of control?
God's not a rain god, that he just does what we ask him to do.